we're doing the media group a little bit different than we have in the past. We've been more about storytelling and getting everybody drunk, because usually we've opened the bar by this time. But instead, we're going to actually bring actionable info that you need about how to stream your races and how to get involved in this craze, because hey, it's kind of cool being able to watch races from all over the world as well as sports from all over the world on an app. And you know, with my little Roku, I can pick up everything that I ever wanted to watch, and a lot of events that I formerly wished. I kept saying, wish these events were televised, and now they are. So we're going to let the group introduce themselves, and Brian, you're going to lead us off.
Brian Dunlap with World Racing Group, World of Outlaws, and DirtVision.com.
And tell us a little bit about yourself, please. A little more than just name and...
Oh, okay. So DirtVision.com, as part of World Racing Group, has been streaming since '04 was our first broadcast. We expanded to the entire World of Outlaws schedule in 2017, and we're now in that 500 plus races a year.
Fantastic. Michael, tell us about yourself and about your organization.
Michael Rigsby. I am the Vice President of Strategy for Flow Racing. My job, I think, is to shape the strategic initiative and direction that Flow Sports racing vertical takes. For those of you that don't know, Flow Sports has about 23 to 25 verticals: wrestling, grappling, racing, etc. And I oversee the strategic direction of the motorsports vertical. And I think we are going to stream about 2,100 nights of racing in 2022.
Jeff.
Jeff Nasty, Vice President of Moto America. We are the AMA Superbike Series. We do 10, 11 events a year at all the big road courses around the U.S., and I'm sales and marketing, so heavily involved with marketing of our events and sales of sponsorships, and also involved with content streaming and distribution.
And last but certainly not least, because he has been a big supporter of Racetrack Business Conference from day one, and that has been a partnership that we cherish, Tim and I, because I don't think that we would be to number 11, and I don't think we would be this large, filling the room, if we didn't have the buy-in from folks like you. Ralph, introduce yourself.
Well, thank you. That's very kind of you to say. Ralph Shaheen, been on national TV for 34 years now, holding microphones, covering all forms of motorsports out there. Also president and one of the owners of Speed Sport. It's the oldest, most trusted brand name in American motorsports journalism. We've been around since 1934, so we've been talking about racing for a while. On the streaming side, we've been involved in that pretty good for the last few years. This year, we'll do 2,500 events live streamed, so we've been pretty active there as well.
Supercross isn't the same without you.
But World Supercross is now.
That's right.
That schedule comes out Friday.
I'm looking forward to that because I missed you.
Thank you.
I'm going to put Michael on the hot seat, so to speak, first. So streaming, how's it changed for our world, and ultimately, who ends up footing the cost?
How has it changed, and who foots the cost, are the question. So for those of you that don't know in the room, I started my company, Dirt on Dirt, back in 2007, and I sold my company to Flow Sports in 2019, so about a 12-year shelf life on Dirt on Dirt. Dirt on Dirt still exists, but under the Flow Sports umbrella. And I think Brian and some others would agree, streaming has changed more in the last 2 years or 3 years since I sold my company than it has evolved in the first 12 years of my ownership of Dirt on Dirt. So I say that to answer the first part of your question, that the advances in technology, the revenue generated from streaming, the cost of streaming, everyone only ever counts the revenue, the cost of streaming, that has all rapidly changed and evolved a lot in the last 3 years, like a market amount, right? So that answers the first part of your question. Who foots the cost? There are different models, right? I think everybody on this dais a little bit represents a little bit different model in how streaming works. To give an example for us, we have contracts with series, we have contracts with racetracks, we have contracts with various other folks, And by and large, we would handle production costs if you're talking about production costs specifically. But there are a lot of times we will receive feeds from racetracks or feeds from series. And in that case, we bake those costs into the rights fee that we pay them, and sometimes they incur the cost. So both of those things are sort of a long way to say, it depends, to both of your questions. The evolution question, immensely. It would be hard for me to sit on the stage, and I could fill 3 hours with how much streaming has changed since the first time I drove my minivan to a race in 2007 by myself, all the way through the large organization that Flow is now. But the cost is, it all depends on how each deal is specifically structured.
All right, Ralph, this one's for you. How do you measure success with the streamed version of racing? Is it about the number of subscribers? How do you measure success in that business?
Well, ironically, it's the same answer that he just gave. There's a lot of different ways of doing it because we all have different business models as to how we operate our businesses. Means different things success-wise for different groups based on what that model is. I think probably the one factor that's the same across the board is, was your viewer happy? If your viewer's happy, that's success. So probably the biggest thing to making your viewer happy is not losing your signal, right? And that's also one of the biggest challenges to live streaming because you can't go black in the middle of a race. That's the one thing you can't do, right? If you have problems where you're dipping out and that sort of thing, that's where you're not going to have any kind of success. So if your viewers are happy, then you're having success because they're returning, and then that success works its way down the line, right? You're able to make your partners happy, your tracks happy, your fans happy, and all that. So there's not an easy way of just saying this is how you get success. Bottom line, yeah, that's part of it. But if your viewer's not happy, you're never going to have a happy bottom line.
I can echo that. I still think about when we were streaming audio and we lost the Snowball Derby with 3 laps to go. There was nothing more frustrating than a power outage, partial power outage, that you had nothing to do with. There was a lot of explaining to do to the sponsors.
But you know, to that, and maybe this is a good segue for that, everybody up here does a good job, right? We're all quality broadcasters. Remember, there was a time when we all thought cable television was a crazy concept because we're all used to getting up, walking across the living room, turning the dial and going and sitting back down on the couch because you had 3 or 4 channels to choose from and that was it. The cable comes along and says, now what have I got to do? I've got to just DirecTV, what is that? How do I do this? But then before you know it, we're all looking at like cable and satellites, normal television. Same thing is going on here. Yeah, streaming was a wild concept a few years ago. As Rigsby pointed out here, we were all kind of like, wait, how does this whole thing work? I got to do what? Now, streaming, it's basically regular TV, and everybody's getting very much accustomed to it. So don't panic over the word streaming anymore. There's different ways of doing it, different business models for doing it, but everybody's pretty good at it. To your point, as we were just talking about, the dipping of the broadcast, I remember being right down the street here at 16th, down there at that big circle over there, doing MotoGP live on Big Fox. MotoGP on Big Fox. 3 laps from the finish, whole thing went kaput. I got nothing. I got no sound, I got no video, I got no audio, and I'm live on Fox. So it can happen on the biggest networks in the world doing the biggest forms of motorsport just as easily as it can at a local little dirt track, streaming.
All right, go ahead.
I think what else has changed from the consumer's point of view too is paying for it, obviously. If you would have start charging people $7 or $8 to watch one sport 5 or 10 years ago, it would have been impossible, but now it's the norm. Whether it's Disney Plus or Hulu, people aren't so sensitive to it anymore.
Very true. All right, Brian, I know when the whole streaming of races started, I heard from a lot of promoters that said, hey, this is going to hurt my bottom line at the racetrack. I'm not going to put as many fannies in the seats, but I think having the product more accessible has actually built the need to see this circus when it comes to town.
That's exactly right. When we started with the World of Outlaws, you know, we were kind of on that bleeding edge of every race of a series being accessible, and part of that reason was the World of Outlaws can be a tough series to follow as a fan when you're just reading the morning after of what happened. But now when you engage that customer night in and night out at every race, they're not going to miss it when you're in their backyard, and that's been proven now as we've seen increased attendance. Our databases are tied together, so our ticket buyers and our Dirt Vision subscribers are all tied in the same database, and we're seeing that average number of tickets bought annually go up per subscriber. So, like, hard proof that it's working, and then at the end of the day, we have sold out grandstands, which help too. So, and
that's a database that you can market to, that your sponsors are going to love being able to market to as well.
We promote a vast majority of our races. And if streaming was hurting us, we would change that model quickly, and it's done nothing but help our end.
Jeff, talk a little bit about how streaming races, events has helped you guys.
Very much so. I'll ditto his comment about watching the metrics on our ticket purchase subscriber database versus our live streaming database. The overlay definitely increases it.
All right, you guys know I'm a frustrated wannabe game show host, so this is a toss-up question to the class. How big of an event does it have to be something that you can monetize with streaming the event?
I would say, you know, any event can be monetized. I think what we see the biggest thing is you have to start with a very well-run, efficient event first. Exposing an event that has some flaws and drags out, exposing that to a bigger audience doesn't help put butts in seats. That's what we've noticed. I think you've got to be cognizant of the product you're putting out there and know that it's now going out to a larger audience, and make sure that that's the face you want facing them.
But those same problems, those are the ones that are irritating your fans in the stands and keeping them from coming back next week.
Exactly,
anyway.
Exactly. Only now you're keeping more and more people away, and they're not going to buy that ticket.
I'll echo what Brian said there a little bit. We get racetracks or series or promoters that reach out to us all the time and say, well, surely you wouldn't consider my event. And I don't know that we consider every event. So to answer your initial question, there is no, we don't take them all. We simply cannot take them all from a resource perspective. But there is no event too big, too small. We don't really think of events in terms of that. Like to Brian's point, each event has its own unique characteristics that can make it valuable, right? So to get back to your original point, we don't really view things that way or through that lens.
And I wouldn't worry about monetizing the whole thing and making it pay the first time. You've got to build up some practice with it and get people watching it first. So, you know, monetizing the subscribers to it might be tough. You got to be free for a while, even if you're a smaller track and you're streaming, get people hooked to it. But you can monetize it by getting a sponsor on there. That's an easier way. But don't look to pay for the whole thing right away. You got to walk before you run.
I think you got to ask a little bit about why you're trying to live stream too. Are you doing it because you're looking at it as a revenue stream? Are you looking at it as a way to market? What's your goal as an event for live streaming? Yeah, it can be a great revenue stream. It can be the third revenue stream, front gate, back gate, live stream gate. But it can also be a very important marketing tool that might be more valuable than just what you get through your live stream revenue. Because ultimately it might get you more money down the road, because if you're getting more eyeballs, maybe that's attracting more sponsorship, or you're able to give your sponsors added value through your live streaming, depending on who your partner is with your live streaming and how they work with you and what their approach is to putting on their live stream events. So you need to ask yourself a little bit about what your goals are before you reach out to anybody up here about live streaming, because you need to know what it is you're really looking to accomplish.
That's a very good point. You've got to take care of your sponsors. You want to do it genuinely and authentically. But if you're streaming an event, you've got race coverage, you've got before, you've got between heats, you have all this filler space that you need to get in there, and that's a great way to, even in the background, pimp your sponsor out in terms of exposure, or even interviews or something like that.
I'm pivoting a little bit, but I want to piggyback on something Ralph said. I'm changing the subject a little bit. It's sort of a cousin to the question you were asking. I use the word exposure all the time, right? And I fear for this group up here, sometimes track owners and operators treat exposure like a dirty word. Money, right? Money matters, of course. They have to be compensated financially for this thing that we're streaming. But take Gateway, for instance, this past weekend, the indoor event at St. Louis. Hopefully some of you in here were able to see that or aware of it at least. The promoter of that event, because of the exposure they got this past weekend, has already been reached out multiple times about higher sponsorship levels, higher sponsorship dollars. And I'm breaking a cardinal rule of telling how much a driver sold in T-shirts, but I'm going to do it anyway. We had a young man from Kentucky, Charlie Mefford, who gave just an incredible interview on the Dome floor. In about 12 to 13 hours, sold nearly $16,000 in T-shirts based on that interview he gave. I say all of that to say, to Ralph's point, how are you monetizing it? What are the other ways of monetizing it? Not just the stream itself, not just the revenue from the rights fee. There is these 5 or 6 untapped buckets of things you can do, like the examples that I just mentioned, that we as Flow need to be better at working with our partners on understanding those. We need to be better too, for sure. But those buckets exist, and there is sizable and tangible money in those buckets to get that we all need to work together better to tap into.
Great point.
And you're right, there's these hidden benefits that you never believe would come from streaming. Had a client who was streaming their basically semi-pro basketball, development basketball league. They had an executive that stumbled across it from the D-League team associated with the Memphis Grizzlies that invited one of the players down for a tryout. And I knew a private high school up in the Chicagoland area that actually landed a few college scholarships for their kids. They were just streaming the games for grandma and grandpa, but there's all these other benefits that happen when you go ahead and you put that out there. And the same thing will happen with racing as well. You might attract more racers through the back gate because now their events, their races, they can be seen by their relatives and their friends around the country, around the world.
We've actually seen full-time World of Outlaws teams commit because of the ability for a car owner to participate and watch every race from their home versus having to be on the road.
And those are benefits sponsors should get too, right? They're taking that to sponsors and telling their sponsors, I'm going to be on Dirt Vision every night. And those are, but yeah, Flow needs to streaming services need to work with promoters and tracks at educating them better. And that falls on us a little bit too, right? And I would agree with that.
Okay, before I ask the next question, I want to give the folks out in the audience a chance. If you have a question, raise your hand. Hi, Jamie will find you with hopefully a microphone. Do we have that other microphone around? Good.
Oh, I got your back.
So you find me some questions, but in the meantime, I'm going to ask the panel here again, and we're going to start with you, Jeff. What did you learn over the time you've been streaming the events that you wish you knew right from day one?
I'd have to say that would be the engagement and the appreciation that we have of filling the content in between the races if we had known that earlier. We really do a good job at having roving TV hosts walking around and in the paddock and all that and talking to the riders, and the fans really like to see that. In fact, that's sort of what subscriptions are supposed to be, right? You're supposed to feel, for $100-something a year, you're supposed to feel like your membership and your insight into the series that you're watching is better than the typical person watching it on TV. And being live is great. You get those things that aren't supposed to happen. They get to see that. That's part of content. That's good. Let that happen. It could be a bad word or a racer getting mad and saying something that they shouldn't. That's part of the inside of it. But really the roving hosts and the behind the scenes and the other sort of really live entertainment, I wish we had known that earlier.
Brian.
I would say that social community that develops during a live broadcast and that importance and fostering and building that. You see people across social media commenting, interacting with the race, going back and forth. that drives those T-shirt sales. That snowballs the broadcast, the event, and the sport as a whole.
I wish I had acquired World of Outlaws media rights in 2017. That's what I wish. That's what I wish. I would say B, the insane importance of being genuine with our audience. I think we can all agree, and obviously Ralph's done large national television broadcasts, but even those size broadcasts want you to be genuine, right? Don't fake it. And I think that's one thing the pandemic taught us. Say what you will about Barstool Sports. Some people love them, some people hate them. The Barstoolification of American, the way we digest media, not everything needs to be a 76 camera, 4K, crystal perfect shoot. Our audience doesn't necessarily demand that. And we had sports broadcasters across America sitting in their living room on Zoom. That's kind of persisted now that the pandemic is over or towards its end or whatever it is. And I think being genuine comes along with that. Don't fake it for your audience, right? Be genuine for your audience. Don't talk down to them. And no matter the size of the broadcast, be that way.
Absolutely. I think a lot of what these guys have talked about is all stuff I've experienced in 34 years in TV. I think what I learned personally the most over the last few years of doing this is just on the technology side of how feasible it is to do this stuff now. That's an area that I personally am not very good at. If you know me, I'm email challenged, let alone, figuring out how to send signals out into space and bounce them around and bring them back. But fortunately, I got a guy with a propeller screwed to his forehead named Chris Grainer, who you know very well, who's exceptionally good at that. And I've learned a tremendous amount from Chris about how you can do this and how you can do it from anywhere and how easily in today's world, with the equipment that's now available, you can make it happen.
If it makes you feel any better, Chris and Brian know a lot more than me also at those specific things.
All right, so I call Frisbee football games. It's an insane sport, ultimate disc. And the pandemic led the league to try something new, which is to use their channel and their subscriber base to develop talk shows, which have now continued and have grown. There's like 3 of them every week. And the talk shows get more publicity sometimes than the games themselves because people love the personalities. Are you utilizing that in the series for Moto America yet?
Tom, would you write that down on my notepad? You're sitting next to us. That's a great idea.
Yeah, I can help you host one too.
Apparently, yeah. Man, that's a great idea. But what we do in that is we get the helmets off the guys. I mean, our riders look like spacemen, and so that's one of our strategies and one of our goals is initiatives really is to get the helmet off and show the rider to the people and all that and make sure we're showing that part of it and bring the fans in.
Brian, you guys have a bunch of knuckleheads driving for you. There are personalities that you can really bring out.
I echo that. Yes, it's important. It's that face giving the viewer someone to root for, a reason to engage and a reason to stay engaged, and then tune in tomorrow and show up to the race next weekend when you're in town. That's key.
Yeah, Paul Tagliabue used to say, everybody cares about the NFL on Sunday. How do you make people care about the NFL on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, right? That's what we've always tried to do at Dirt on Dirt is give them a face. Mark Richards, famous chassis builder in dirt track racing, and I won't say the name, said, we always knew this driver was an idiot. You gave him a microphone, and now we all know he's an idiot, right? And that stuff is important. Let people know there are idiots out there. So,
and it doesn't have to be the top guys either. Everybody likes to root for an underdog.
Right.
So we make sure we go down the grid in the paddock. You want to give the fans everybody. In fact, in some cases, you want to show somebody that's down mid paddock that's really struggling and improving. People love a story.
Michael, are your clients utilizing their channel on Flow for more than just the live event yet?
You mean like the tracks we work with in the series?
Yeah, tracks and series and other sports. Yeah.
Probably not as much as we would like to see, and I think that goes back to that part that we could do a better job there too. Whether a track or series or anybody ever comes to us with a pain point, we take it seriously, right? And we need to engage with them as much as they feel that pain. So probably not as much as I would like to see, and I'm hoping 23 is a yes. I can sit here in December of 2023 and emphatically answer yes. So.
Okay, Ralph, I understand there's some big changes that coming soon. Are we going to see some
Anything you want to tell me about?
No, I'm just hearing rumors about big changes.
Sajak is leaving and you're the guy.
Now that would be good. Although my wife would probably be upset with me working with Vanna, but that's a whole nother story. Now, are there big changes coming, I understand?
Yes.
Are we going to see some old, pardon the expression, speed channel talk show type stuff come back to the airwaves?
SS1 is what you're talking about, Speed Sport 1. We broke ground on that last week, announced to the world that we're going to do that. Big announcement tomorrow morning, 10 a.m., booth 4801 is our Speed Sport booth. Will be the grand unveiling of everything that's coming. Well, not everything. I can't tell you everything just yet, but a lot of what's coming will be announced tomorrow. Oh, yeah, well, absolutely. As I was saying earlier, we all do this, I think, pretty well. We're all fairly well established at how we do this live streaming stuff, and everybody has a different broadcast model as to how they go about presenting this content to the fans out there, the racing world. We're going to take a little bit of a different approach with SS1. Doesn't mean that any of this is wrong. Nothing's wrong. We just are trying a different approach. So Speed Sport 1 is going to be that different approach as to how we're going to present content to the race fans, how we're going to get that to you for you to absorb it. The one thing that Speed Sport has always done has been very good journalistically since 1934. Been a leaders when it comes to journalism in motorsports here in the U.S. Chris Economaki, the godfather, figured out how to do it, set the bar. We've done everything we could, Joe and I, since we've owned it, to not lower that bar, keep it up there, and now we're taking that bar and just evolving as racing always does. We were talking about it just a little bit ago with Beth Perrette up here. Racers are always evolving, trying to fix things, find a new avenue to make it a little bit quicker, a little bit faster, a little bit better, and that's what we're going to try to do with Speed Sport 1. Doesn't mean don't have an interest in anything over here. There's nothing wrong over here. It's just we're going to try something a little bit different to give you another option over here.
I want to see wind tunnel-like program come back. That's just me. All right, we got a question in the back here.
Hello. Hi, my name is Zach. I'm the manager at the Ginger Man Raceway. It's a grassroots track in Michigan. And we don't have any big pro races. I mean, we have kind of smaller events. I mean, something like Lemons. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Lemons. But don't you think they would appreciate it if, like, our track had like a camera set up where we could have a streaming service for them? Like, have different cameras set up with, you know, some graphics, and just say, like, here, you pay an extra however much amount of money, and you can use our cameras and, you know, streaming service. But the thing is, these events don't have a lot of spectators. That's kind of why I don't know if it would be worth, you know, like, for these groups to want to do that. But
Man, I think a lot of people
like,
know
say,
about
say
the
Porsche Club of Chicago, or like SCCA regional events, like those. We don't get a ton of spectators, really.
Well, that's in person. You might not, but I think almost everybody knows about that series, and more importantly, would like to watch it. And it's probably especially that series, watching something live that's not polished and watching all the shit that happens. You market that and get that trickle out on a bunch of forums and sites and pages and all that's going on, and people want to watch some of the mayhem live, unpolished. I think you'd be surprised at how many people would watch it.
The unpolished stuff is what goes viral. That's what, I mean, I would watch that all day long. Show me the mess. I feel normalized then.
So here's the question. What is the minimum that a track like that would need to go ahead and put together something that would find a market? How much equipment do they need? Where do they find the people to run it?
No human being on the planet is better to answer this question than my good friend Brian Dunlap.
Ooh, I was going to, Chris probably back there. It's probably got a good. You can start small. A little harder to start small on a road course, but definitely doable. And it can be some college kids and camera and pushing it to YouTube, or from there, partnering with someone like Michael. Who can do everything?
I see what you did.
Who can do everything you need? And it's one phone call.
That was good. That was very good. Brian's right though. There's a variety of budgets that you can set up to do that. And I jokingly said Brian because Brian's really good at building tech stacks and putting things like that together. But you'd be surprised even if you started small, right? And could $2,000-$3,000? Is that four?
Four tops, and you could get rolling and look pretty good.
Right, and have it doesn't need to be a 76 camera Super Bowl production, right? You can connect your fans with something for, I think Brian's right, $3,000 or $4,000, which I think will help you sell tickets and get more spectators. So you're in that range to answer your question.
In every city, in every state, somewhere out there, there's a bunch of young kids in college and that want to make that their career. You give them the chance to go out and do that, give them a resume stuffer, something to do, even contact one of the colleges. They would jump at that. That's a great opportunity. And you'll be surprised at how great a work you'll find in reaching out to some of those kids.
Not to give away any of our secrets, but I've had really good success pulling some young talent out of the religious sector, that kids that are streaming their church services, but they're secret motorsports nuts, and next thing they're writing code for us.
You might not increase your front gate, but there's a whole bunch of guys with Miatas sitting out there that when they see what you're doing and they see the cars that are running around there and they go, all I got to do is put a roll cage in and grab a helmet and I come run out there too. Now your back gate went up, and I'm betting your back gate charges more than your front gate anyway. So you could do, there's quarter miles out there, if I'm not mistaken. I know for a fact, there's guys that have quarter miles with one camera on the roof, shooting it and live streaming. Just depends on how big your track is. When it comes to road courses, you got to deal a little bit with lens length can help. That's where you're going to start spending a little bit of your money, just trying to figure out how many corners we got to shoot. Can we put a camera over here and shoot 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, or do we have to get another camera to shoot 5 as well? Do we really need to shoot 5? Is 5 even a passing zone? Maybe you skip 5 and get over to 7. That's a question that you can answer better than I can. I haven't been to Ginger Man.
We have 11 corners at Ginger Man.
Okay, but it depends on how they're laid out and where spots are. Is there a little hill over here that I can get up on and shoot more from here as opposed to down here? That's the kind of thing that you're going to have to think about to decide what that budget is ultimately going to be.
Not many trees to get in the way, though, so you got a pretty good look. That's what I say.
I agree.
Oh, yeah.
And you can utilize it for some of the other topics we were talking about today to help you keep an eye for track ops of what's going on out on the track, because it helps you see what's going on as well.
It's also good optics for you. It's a contemporary thing to do. If you look at your whole narrative and who you are as a track, when you talk to sponsors and people, to be able to say that you're doing streaming to some degree is just it's a nice facet to have in this day and age. You should be doing it to some degree.
Mike Gritter from Autobahn. Kind of a multi-part thing here, so I apologize. First off, how do you determine value of a sponsorship for a streaming? Is it totally based on views, and how do you work out those dynamics? Also, are there advantages or disadvantages to a live production as opposed to something that's edited down, takes out the boring parts and just the exciting parts? And then lastly, what does it take if you've got a streaming recording and you're capable of doing that? What does it take to get it onto one of your platforms?
There are no boring parts. I think that's what we're supposed to say, right?
Sure.
Say the second part there again, because I wanted to key in on that one. It was the...
Well, so what are the advantages or disadvantages of a live production or something that's edited down?
I find, and we do have some VOD, video on demand content that we do on Flow and Dirt on Dirt still, but in 2022, it is overwhelmingly, in the society we live in, the world we live in, to not do something live is just, it's almost, I think, almost impossible to not do it.
Like you look at, we do a lot of VOD, all of our stuff ends up on our VOD channel, actually free of charge for registered users. It's great to reach people, but you don't get that engagement and interaction and that real-time touch and feel.
Are you posting highlights?
We're doing highlights as well, and then we're reposting the race broadcast within our VODP.
You just simply will not get the same engagement if you only do it video on demand. You won't. I think Brian and I have 15, 16, 17 years of experience in this world. You just won't get it. You should do it after the live broadcast, but not before. As far as getting on one of our platforms, it's pretty simple for us. Actually, the beautiful Kendra Jacobs in the back of the room back there is who you would contact in rights acquisition. You reach out to us and say, I'm interested in having our racetrack be on your platform, and then we start a discussion, right? It's truly that simple.
In regards to your first question, a lot of people focus on views and viewers, the quantity of people and how many times they're watching it. But shockingly, the one most people overlook is total hours viewed. That's what really matters. So if you have a track sponsor that's doing a board on the side of the track or A-frames or something like that, he doesn't care how many views. He wants to know how many hours and therefore how many laps and how many times people have seen that. That's really the guts of everything.
And there's not a lot of metrics on it, right? It's not like this is such a new phenomena that's not like, oh, you've got 10,000 viewers on your stream, that's worth XYZ. Unfortunately, that doesn't really exist because this is sort of newish, right? I think we're trying to standardize that a little more, but unfortunately, we're not there yet.
And if you're already selling those sponsors, it's just helping you keep those sponsors in the future and maybe get a little bump in the future years.
Yeah, it's not like back in the day when you had the Joyce Julius report where it came out and it said, Pennzoil was mentioned, this many times in the Cup broadcast for this many minutes. We're not at that level yet. But what it can do is help you keep who you already have, because you can tell that sponsor, hey, you got seen in this, or we're doing this now, so you're getting a little added bump. You can do other things in that broadcast. You can do commercials for them. You can do little features for them that you can run in there. Maybe it's a billboard guy, depending on the size of your track. Yours is a little bit different than maybe a pavement Saturday night track who has a billboard on the back straightaway that they're getting, let's say, $750 for the season. Now maybe that promoter can go back and say, tell you what I'm going to do. I've got this live streaming thing going on every week. I'm going to run a commercial for you. I'm going to do this little feature in the middle of it. I'm going to run that once a week too. Your billboard's now $1,000. Hey, it made you an extra $250. That's the way you can kind of start monetizing the live streaming that way. But you got to remember there's also that live stream revenue of just people buying to get in to watch too. So as they were talking about earlier, there's multiple ways you can take live streaming and make it, as Rigsby pointed out, all these different buckets that are out here. One is what you can charge. One is what you can get for your revenue stream from people just paying to watch. There's all kinds of different avenues to get that extra money out of it.
There's the functional side of exposure that you're doing, and then there's a bit of an ego or a passion to it too. Like a brought to you by is real easy in a broadcast. We do them all the time. Everybody does them. They come up. Today's race is brought to you by Dunlop. The logo holds on there. You've got the TV host saying it. Those are costless, really, to add in. And not only is that valuable to the consumers, they see that and there's an affinity and all that, but it also makes a sponsor feel good to see that. It satisfies their ego. We also run an icon in the corner of our screens. A lot of series do this. I call it the TVGI logo. It's how Nielsen measures it. It's in the lower corner, and it just rotates during content. That adds up a lot, and people love to see their logo on there. I mean, at the end of a season, it's stunning how many millions of impressions that gets. It's permanent, goes all over the bloody world. It's awesome, right? But it also, your sponsors that are watching that race, they love to see that on there. It makes them feel good. Easy. One thing we haven't talked about, but everybody should think about if you are streaming or you're thinking about streaming, I'm not saying it because I am one, think hard about your announcers at your racetrack.
Oh, yeah.
Okay? Because with streaming, most of the time, 99% of the time, what you're doing is you're just picking up the PA guy that most of you have, which is fine, but you need to work with your PA guy to make sure that he's understanding what you're trying to, or she is trying to accomplish, what you're trying to accomplish with your live streaming. What are your goals? Are there things you want out there? Do you want that person to continuously remind everybody that you have a race again next Saturday night? Is there a billboard on the back straightaway that you want to talk about because Bob's towing service is running a special this week if they show the race ticket, and as a promoter you got a little extra money from Bob to make sure that was said? Is he doing a good job of getting your message out to the world the way you want it out to the world? So sit down with your announcers and make sure that they're doing it right. the way you need it done. And also, there's a little bit of a different message style to how you do broadcasting out of PA and how you do it, quote unquote, television world. And you want that brought across the right way. And if you don't have the right person, get the right person. Spend a little bit more, get somebody in the infield to interview your drivers. There's a lot of things you need to think about when it comes to who's holding the microphone.
That's a talent for sure. That's a unique talent, being able to do that. One other thing, and I mentioned this earlier, show the experience. I mean, there's the racing itself, but you also have people that are watching your broadcast or your stream that you want to come to the event too, and you got to show them other people having a good time. In fact, a really great example of that is the pharmaceutical ads you see on TV. You get pounded to death with them, right? You notice in those ads, they don't show you the pill, or maybe they do. They're showing these people living this life, and they look good, and it's the old guy holding the granddaughter and all this. They're riding bikes and all the sunshine and shit like that, right? That's what they're selling, is happiness and health and all that. I saw a pizza stove commercial the other day, and it was a little bit about the stove, but it was this couple, and they're on the deck, and they're drinking wine, and they're having great. That's really what you're selling, is the happiness. And so, man, at a track, that's what you want to sell. You want to swing across a bunch of fans cheering and yelling at the screen. You want people on there that your fans at home want to be there with them, you know. Very important.
All right, what did we learn from this group? We learned don't fake it, be genuine, and have a damn good announcer to build excitement. And if you need a little example of that, we got some examples of broadcasts up on the stage here that you can pay attention to and learn, and teach your announcer to be a little better than just a lap counter. We also learned that some of the same issues that people complain about now of why they don't stream their events happened with broadcast TV as well. And every event, big or small, is viable. Bring out the personalities in your drivers. Give the fans a reason to love your drivers, and they will put more fannies in the seats for you. I'm going to ask this group to stay on stage here as we bring Tim up, but give these folks a great round of applause.